Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I painted this fashion illustration, and I'll also show you how I corrected some mistakes using Photoshop. First, you're going to need some paint. I'm going to be using my gouache palette. You'll also need some watercolor paper. Here I'm using the Fabriano and DeSera's watercolor paper. I'll also be using a size 4 paintbrush and some water. First, I like to draw a sort of line down the middle, and this will be my weight line, so this is how I know to keep the body sort of aligned. I am using a few different reference photos here, but I'm not really following one specifically, so as I'm going, I'm just refining and just sort of organically going with the flow and seeing what I can change. So here I'm moving around the arm, I decided to put it down. Usually my sketching process does look something like this, where I don't really have a solid idea in mind of what I want to paint. As you get more experience with drawing and sketching, you will get more comfortable with just sort of changing things around and making your own creation as opposed to following a photo. Once I'm happy with my sketch, I'm taking my kneaded eraser and just rolling it over the page to gently remove the excess graphite on the page. To mix skin tones, I use a mixture of red, yellow, and blue, and I use the blue to kind of tone down the colors. So I will use a mixture typically of burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and then a bit of blue just to desaturate the color. I have heard and read that a lot of people do use brown instead of blue to sort of tone down or darken the color, but I personally find that the brown pigment doesn't always look that great on the page, so I prefer to use blue to tone it down. Also keep in mind that the amount of water that you use will determine how dark the skin tone will be. So in this first layer, I'm really just following my outlines and painting in that skin tone. I'm not adding any extra water or any sort of layering. I'm just really trying to get that initial layer filled in. As you can see with the type of paper that I'm using here, I am getting a lot of texture in that skin tone. However, if you want more of a smooth look, make sure you stick to 100% cotton paper because that will absorb the paint a little bit better and it'll give you a smoother finish. So this is where I started making the mistake, which you'll see later in the video how I correct it. I initially sketched this hand sort of just laying flat on the hat, and I didn't really like that at the end when I looked at it, and I figured, okay, that doesn't really make any sense, the way that the hand would be sitting like that. So later in the video you'll see how I fixed that hand. So now I'm going in with a second layer just to add some shadows and highlights to that skin tone. This isn't something that I'm usually very particular about. I'm not always sort of thinking of where the light source is and what sort of shadow that's casting. I'm just more trying to add definition to her muscles and show where those shadows might be. For For the hat, I'm using a very sort of off-tone yellow, and I'm using a lot of water in there and just doing some quick strokes to show that straw texture. For her hair, I've chosen a deep reddish brown. A helpful trick to remember when painting hair is to think about the hair in different shapes as opposed to individual strands. Now I'm going in with one final layer just to darken those shadows a little bit more, add a tiny bit more depth to the hair and the hat. And finally, I'm just adding a bit of a cast shadow on that hat. For the bathing suit, although I loved the look of the white, I decided to paint it a taupe color. Don't forget to sign your artwork. To scan my artwork, I'm using my Epson Perfection scanner. I usually scan my artwork at 400 to 600 dpi just to make sure I can enlarge it if I need to. Before I do anything else, I'm just removing the background. Using the pen tool, I'm outlining the entirety of the illustration just to clean up those edges. To fix that hand, I'm going in with my pen tool again and outlining the hand so that I can cut it and paste it on a different layer. Now going back to my main layer, I'll use the clone stamp tool in order to fix that hat. Then I'm going back to my top layer with the hand and reshaping it using the pen tool. To add an extra sort of finger at the end there, I'm using the clone stamp tool and the pen tool. Once I'm happy with the way it looks, I'll merge the layers and then I'm going into my levels and adjusting that accordingly. I find that when I scan my artwork, I do lose quite a bit of depth to it, so I like to go in after and readjust the colors and the shadows and make sure it looks the way I want it to. And here's the final piece. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you have any questions for me, please leave them below and let me know what you think of this illustration.